On this episode of the show, I have with me Chandan Lodha. He is co-founder at CoinTracker, and we're going to be talking about his transition from Harvard to Google and then wanting to be a founder. And he's taken quite a leap and built a very interesting company. Well, probably his product could be a whole different episode for a whole different day, but we're going to talk to him about his journey. He spent some time at YC, and you got to evolve as a founder, and he's also a new parent, so a lot of different moving parts, and we'll ask him all about that. But Chandan, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat and connect more.
Absolutely. All right. If you could tell us what CoinTracker does, that'd be great.
CoinTracker does crypto taxes and accounting. So whether you're an individual crypto holder or investor or a business or a brokerage that deals with crypto, we solve the compliance problems associated with taxes and accounting.
Awesome. All right. I think that itself, like I said, I think that could be a really good episode for a lot of people. But in this one, we're going to be talking about your transition. I don't do big background bio type things on the show, but in this case, obviously, we're going to dive into a little bit about that. And you've had a fantastic resume. You were at Harvard. You're at Google. Seems like an ideal path to continue to work for large companies or similar, challenging problems. I guess, what was the decision? What was the driver to go, you know what, I actually want to own my own thing. I want to be, a founder.
Well, I feel very lucky to have been in lots of cool learning environments. And I think that for me, one of the core motivators, straight out of college, I was at Google. It was a great environment, but I kind of knew, authentically true to myself, that I was not going to be the type of person to rise the ranks at a big company like Google. It just didn't it didn't make my heart sing. Let's say it like that. And there's lots of brilliant people there, lots of people I admire and respect a lot, who that track makes a lot of sense for. But for me, I'm impatient. I'm restless. I like doing things quickly, with a sense of urgency. And I felt like it would be easier to be able to flex those types of skills and the desire to do those types of things in a scrappier, earlier stage environment. And so I kind of had a natural pull towards that based on the environment in which I tend to thrive myself. And I think the real big motivator was I really wanted to accelerate my learning, especially when I was newer and earlier in my career. And I felt like the top thing I got optimized for now is learning and growing as much as possible. And so it felt, again, like being in an earlier stage and entrepreneurial type of an environment would maximize my chances of achieving that goal. But I was not super confident and kind of fearful of I'm just going to have no salary and have no job and just be out there on my own trying to figure it out. Like that seemed very scary. So I didn't end up doing it for the first 4 years. I, kind of learned and grew a little bit at Google first. But then after 4 years there, I had built up more confidence. I had built up more of a network. I found a really, really great co-founder. And then I was ready to take the leap.
Did the idea come first? Obviously, it sounds like, you wanted to take the leap. You have that startup mentality, that kind of itch you want to scratch. I guess, taking the leap, did it come with the idea? Did the idea come after wanting to take the leap? What was the order there?
Leap first, think later, which I'm not sure if I would necessarily recommend, but it was kind of, the big motivation there was I wanted to be in this earlier stage learning environment and I wanted to build something, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And so I used to actually live in San Francisco and commute to Mountain View, where the Google headquarters is. And so every day I would be riding this bus and I'd be thinking of okay, what's a startup idea? And every day I would challenge myself to make sure I came up with at least a few ideas. So I had this huge list of ideas. And they were all really horrible, terrible business ideas. And so basically the things that motivated me to end up leaving, though, were I knew I wanted to be in this early stage environment. I knew I wanted to maximize the learning. I had a great co-founder. We had a ton of terrible ideas. And so we just left and we started building and testing various things. So every day it'd be build something, go take it to users, go ask them if they like it. They're like, this is horrible and useless. I would never use this. And then that continued for about 6 months, actually, before we ended up landing on the idea for what is now CoinTracker.
And that there are different ways to get there. And I think this is an interesting path. I guess when you make that leap and you are looking to find the right product that you want to actually build, did you say, hey, I'm going to give myself some time? Was it open-ended? I mean, was there a length of time you were willing to dabble, or was it just a question of, which one you would want to potentially go is the right one?
There was a length of time. It was sort of scary because, again, like I had no salary, I had no income, I had no job security. My parents were like, well, what are you doing? And you're in the fog of ambiguity. You don't know what is going to work or when it's going to work. And so the way I thought about it at the time was sort of financial constraints. It's like, how much runway do I have before not having income is going to be like a major problem for me? And I was really lucky in that I was able to save up a little bit of money from working at Google for 4 years. So I kind of set a time frame of like, okay, I'm willing to give this at least 12 months and then possibly up to 18 months. And after 18 months, it's going to really squeeze hard. And I'm not sure this is going to be feasible anymore. So I was like, okay, I have 12 to 18 months to figure this out. Let me just give myself that much freedom to kind of creatively explore and tinker. And luckily that was enough time.
And I mean, maybe you'll tell us, but I mean, were you a big crypto person? Because obviously your startups in that space, was that a big area of focus for you? Did you learn about it as you were learning about, business ideas? How'd you get to the crypto?
Yeah, I was actually pretty skeptical of crypto, to be totally honest. I had some exposure to it because I had worked on a project related to connecting Coinbase to Google in 2014. And so by virtue of that, I had some exposure to Bitcoin. I had like a small, Bitcoin wallet and things like that. But fast forward to 2017, it's still pretty early in the crypto space. And it's sort of like this magic internet money thing that's super obscure. I feel like crypto is in still many ways like very nascent, but in 2017 it was like super nascent. And I was like, what is this magic internet money thing? And like all the news coverage about it is like illicit scams and kind of shady backwater type of stuff. And so I was not like, we got to go all in crypto. I was interested though in fintech in general. And so the way we fell into this is that we were building some fintech applications related to like robo investing and building smart defaults to help people save for retirement and build wealth over time. And it was in the process of building those products and realizing, wow, like the traditional financial rails are super archaic, very slow, very inefficient, don't work on weekends, don't work on holidays, don't work internationally. That gave me the kind of kick to be like, okay, maybe I should go learn a little bit more about this whole Bitcoin thing and see what all the hoopla is about. And that made me actually go to firsthand resources, like the actual Bitcoin white paper, as opposed to my primary exposure, which was through these like articles talking about how it's all for scammers. That made me realize, actually, Bitcoin is just about being able to send someone value without a third party. That's actually a very simple and brilliant concept. It makes a ton of sense. It solves a lot of these archaic financial rails problems. Like, I should look into this more. And next thing you know, I got sucked down the crypto rabbit hole.
Absolutely. I guess, when we're looking at your journey, you do go from, obviously getting a great education, you go to Google, and then you end up obviously being co-founder of CoinTracker. Between those phases, when you first started CoinTracker, did you have or what leadership experience had you had? Was this your first time being the person who was in charge of decisions? Were you given some of those responsibilities earlier at Google, maybe?
It was definitely like the first major leadership role I had of any kind. There were maybe smaller elements of that in previous roles or projects. I had started a coffee shop in college. So there were various like smaller things I did, but it was the first time where it's like, okay, you're in charge. Like, what are we doing? Who are we hiring? What are we like? You have all this money. Like, what are you going to do with it? So it was definitely a major step function, like step up in terms of autonomy and leadership that required a lot of self-development, personal development, professional development. And honestly, I'm clearly still learning and improving right now too.
Absolutely. I guess when you're now responsible for leadership, and you started the company a couple of years ago, and you become responsible. It's been 8.5 years. I mean, you've grown as a leader through that process. Becoming a first-time founder, a first-time people leader, like generally you're now responsible for your names on the company papers. You're responsible for all of those. If you were to look back and kind of look at that experience of having to learn a lot of stuff trial by fire, you didn't have that playbook. I guess if you were to have some advice for people who do make that leap, what are some things that looking back, you're like, man, I wish somebody would have told me X, Y, or Z, because I did have to figure it out the hard way when it comes to some leadership aspects?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe I'll give you two answers. So one is, I forget who said this, but someone once told me like, managing the business is easy, managing people is hard. And I think that's really true. Like a lot of the hardest things that we've had to deal with over the last 8.5 years have been people related issues. Especially as you grow and we have more people. Our company is currently around 100 people. And yeah, just everyone is going through life and going through their own challenges all the time. And when you're at scale of 100 people, like that means, every week someone in the company is like going through something really tough. And oftentimes that impacts personal and professional life and the way collaborations work and things like that. And so, yeah, just dealing with lots of different types of people issues. There's immigration issues, there's personal issues, there's deaths in the family, there's like performance issues. There's just a constant stream of things that are happening. And the more people you have, there's more frequency of those things happening. So that has been a tough thing to learn and grow and develop on. The second thing is that some of the lessons I learned at Google were really helpful and transferable to a startup environment. And some of the things I learned at Google were actively like very harmful in a startup environment. So there was some like amount of figuring out what those things are and then like unlearning them the hard way so that I could actually learn how to do things the right way. And a simple example of that is if you want something at Google, you can just have 50 million users on launch day, or even 1 billion users on launch day, because it has such a massive name, brand, distribution, etc. When you launch something new that no one has ever heard of, you have 0 users on launch day. No one knows what you are. No one cares what you are. And you have to like beg, kick, and scream to get anyone to care about you. And that is like a very different, like figuring out how to go get your first user for something is not a skill that you learn at like a FANG company. So yeah, there were like a number of lessons like that that were really important to unlearn and then actually learn.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. When I speak to people who make the transition from a larger company to a smaller company, I mean, yeah, there's a notion of you get a lot more control, and obviously it's your decisions, it's all these things. But on the flip side of it, you lose a lot of resources that you get comfortable with, right? Like if you need something, it's there. It's probably not even questioned.
Totally.
And some of those little things are not. Some of them are trivial. I mean, it could be office things. It could be infrastructure to test a feature out. It could be access to resources that you just don't get. When you look at that and you look at that transition, and you were at Google long enough, 4 years. I mean, you're pretty comfortable. You probably had some decent handcuffs there to leave that and go. The creature comforts. I hear a lot of people have to not only deal with the financial side of it, obviously, if they're just joining a startup, but there's a lot of creature comforts you're giving up. And I think that always is not easy for people. I mean, it might sound trivial, but I think it's a thing.
Totally. It's definitely a thing. For me, it wasn't that big of an issue because I was still pretty junior in my career. I was unmarried. I had no kids. Like I didn't have like a lot of financial obligations or needs. It was easier to let go than it might be for someone else who has 3 kids and a mortgage and like is, has to make ends meet. But it's certainly nice to be able to have, catered meals at work in a nice office. But I think that the really challenging thing is talent, because at Google, you have just a pipeline of world-class, engineers, AI researchers, whatever, just fed to you. And you never think about recruiting ever. Or at least not when you're like, at the level of Google that I was in. And in startups, your team is everything. Like you live, breathe, and die by your team. And you have to spend a lot of time and effort building out recruiting processes and talent branding and like making people aware of what you're doing and rallying them to the cause. Like that's a huge part of the job. So that's probably the biggest thing. That was a major difference.
And when you're looking at your background and kind of just the journey to be, I know you mentioned you had some experience at YC, and that was helpful in its own. And I know that's a big goal for a lot of startups, is they want that YC experience. I guess talk to us a little bit about your YC experience and kind of what you gained in kind of that process overall.
Yeah. So my co-founder and I sort of applied pretty last minute, kind of on a whim. We had basically decided to work on this crypto thing maybe around end of August, early September, and the deadline was like probably less than a month after that. So we were kind of scrambling to like figure out what we were doing, and we had like a few weeks max to like put together something and like put together an application. But we were kind of like, what the hell? Why not just apply? And if we got in, that'd be really validating. We probably won't, but why not just try? And we went through the interview process. It's sort of like infamously like 10 minutes. Super fast and snappy, like, go, 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 go type of environment. And we walked out of it being like, we definitely did not get in. Like, that was brutal. We just got totally decimated. Like, that was really harsh. We'll try again next time. And then later that day, they called us and said we were in, and we were like so happy and so surprised. But it was very validating for us. And the thing that was really useful about it, the top thing was we went from knowing 0 people who had crypto, because it was so obscure and our friends and family were like, not involved in this at all, to having 100 peer founders, all of whom had crypto portfolios. And that was really useful because we really needed to be immersed in an environment full of our users and potential customers to figure out what would be valuable for them. And so that was like probably the top thing, just like super smart group of very ambitious people who are all potential users of ours. And we can like I bounce ideas off of constantly day by day by day by day. And then additionally, like separate from that, the other thing that was really useful is that YC has a really strong playbook of how to think about like company building in the earliest stages. I'd never built a company before. I had no idea what I was doing. We were flying by the seat of our pants. And YC's like, okay, you want to launch on the front page of TechCrunch? Like, here's how you do that. You want to hire someone? Like, here's how you do that. You have a legal question? Like, here's a world-class lawyer who will answer your question for free in 1 hour. So just like, any type of company related thing, they've seen like 7,000 of these things happen, and they just know, they'll just like, here's exactly what you do. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, just go do this thing. And that is really helpful as you're going on this adventure for the first time, to kind of have this guide that's like, yeah, I totally understand what you're going through. We've seen 5,000 other people do that. Here's exactly what you should do. Don't waste time thinking about it. Just go back to building your product and selling to users. Those are the only 2 things you should focus on. And that was really helpful too.
Those questions when you're first starting out, they're new to each founder, but they seem like the biggest problems you could ever have to deal with. So it's actually really great that there's a resource that they provide to kind of, make that a lot easier than it should be. And, I guess we have been talking about your background, this journey as a founder. You look back on yourself. It's been 8.5 years. When you look at your own progress, your own evolution as a founder, do you inventory that? Do you check in regularly? How do you, I guess the question is, how do you actually look at yourself and go, well, how have you changed, improved, etc.?
I should probably do it more. I think introspection is really valuable. So it's a good push. But there are some habits and rituals that I have built. So on the professional side, our company does performance reviews every 6 months. And I'm not exempt from those. I go through like an actual performance review myself. My co-founder gives me like really detailed feedback. I've done 360 reviews from like lots of members of the team in the past too. And that's really insightful. Like, we actually take that really seriously. And it's not because I like super care what my performance rating is. It's because I want to get the feedback of like, what did I do really well? And where could I improve, or what are my blind spots? So that is one sort of habit and cadence that's built into the company culture and the way we do performance. On the personal side, I have made a habit of writing sort of like personal life OKRs, like objectives and key results. It's kind of tongue in cheek as a joke, but it's basically like, what are my goals for the year? What I want to achieve? Like, what are my New Year's resolutions? But I actually write them out in a very thorough way with like trackable, like, I want to achieve X this year. And then I score myself every year. For the last several years, I've done this. And then I look back and say like, okay, well, I said I was going to do this. How well did I do? Where did I exceed my expectations? Where did I fall short? Like, how do I feel about that? How should I change this for the next year? And that can be all kinds of things. It can be like family oriented and relationship oriented. It can be philanthropic. It can be like having fun and hobbies. It can be about learning and growth. One of my favorite ones is to change my mind on 3 issues each year. And that has like led to some interesting like personal growth too. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like trying to build habits and rituals around checking in on introspection.
I like that one. I haven't heard that one, but that's a good one. I might have to borrow that. Because I actually think sometimes I tell people changing your mind is not because you're influenced, but because you actually consciously decided you were incorrect or you had a thinking error somewhere. I think it's an exceptionally powerful thing to do, because sometimes thinking error creeps in, and before you know it, you've actually lost sight of the reasons you held on to some beliefs. So I love the fact that you do that. I guess maybe one question I did want to touch on, because it does come up when I'm interviewing some founders, and obviously you mentioned you're a new parent. Your life was probably already compressed. If someone out there is a parent, it adds to the time compression. I guess when you are going through your day to day and you have to make some adjustments, I guess your founders are realizing, hey, he's got a new child. We need to be aware of that. Talk to us about how your life has changed. What are you having to see shift in terms of priorities? How do you balance it? Obviously, being a new parent, you want to spend time with your child. All those things.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely time consuming. I certainly work a lot less than I used to. But I think the major difference is that my life is really structured around the schedule that we have for the family now. And I'm already like a pretty structured, scheduled person, like very neurotic type A person. But it's like next level now. Like we have a very set schedule for our baby, and that's every day of the week, 7 days a week, not just like work days, like all days. And so it forces me to be really efficient and really thoughtful about when to work and what times to do various activities. Everything is really structured around that. Whereas before, I could work till 2 a.m. on a Friday. I actually loved doing that. Like no one's online. It's like you can get into a flow state. It's really productive. Like I don't do that anymore at all. So yeah, it's just the way I spend my time is more thoughtful and more structured and more rigid. I also have a really loving, supportive wife, which is awesome and makes all this way easier. Like I don't know how single parents do it. Like shout out to all the single parents out there. Yeah, I know. I think it's having a really good support structure, being really thoughtful and really structured about the time, and then sacrificing some stuff too. Like I spend most of my time on either work or like parenting, and there's not a ton of time for a lot of other things outside of that. So it's just picking what things I really care about and kind of going all in on those things, and that means some other things fall away.
Absolutely. I think balancing a business of any kind and being a parent, being a founder, it is super challenging. And I think you learn how to prioritize quickly what really doesn't matter. And you're like things that just should not be in your orbit, that you start slashing them. So I completely understand that. I guess maybe last question for you. If you are to look back and, somebody who wants to make the leap from, by the way, whether it's university, first job, doesn't have that, leadership playbook. When you're looking at that and you're looking at what you could have done maybe differently, maybe it's preparation, maybe, I don't know, there's management course, Toastmasters, I don't know, whatever it could be. Is there something you wish that somebody would have told you, hey, before you make that leap, this is something that's going to come in handy. Let's focus on that.
Good question. I'm pretty happy with the way that like my path has turned out. I'm not sure I would change a ton, but if I were giving advice to someone on like what can you do to prepare to be like an entrepreneur, for example, and I'm kind of focused on like software tech businesses right now. It might be different in a different domain, but in a software technology business, I think the top two skills that are really useful are building and selling. And so if there are any ways you can polish those skills, they will come in super handy no matter what you end up doing. And so building often means learning how to write software and coding and learning software development or learning how to use the latest technology. Nowadays, it might be like, how can you build AI agents to be really useful? In 5 years, maybe something totally different, but just being able to build things. And it could even be something that's not related to software at all. It could be like, I want to, like a project I recently did was I turned the shades in my house to open and close on a schedule instead of having an alarm. It could be like learning how to repair your sink, whatever, but like getting your hands dirty, like building something. That is one side. And the other side is selling, which is how do you convince people to buy something? How do you talk to them? How do you market something? How do you create partnerships? So, if you can pick one of those paths, or it could be both, and just figure out small side projects to hone that skill in a practical way, that is probably the top most useful thing I could think of that would have been really useful before getting into this whole journey.
Love it. Jonathan, I appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing. If somebody does have a follow-up question, what's a good way of getting in touch?
I'm on X at Chandan Lodha, and I would be totally happy to engage with people. If you have questions, comments, concerns, want to learn more about CoinTracker, or just want to bounce some ideas off of, I'm always down to do that.
Absolutely. All right. So definitely appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing. And we'll definitely have to revisit you and talk about the products. I think there's a lot of people that be like, hey, you didn't ask them about what the company does in depth. So maybe we'll have to do a follow-up down the road.
I'd love to. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. All right. That's it for this episode. I'll be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I'd love to if you could share this episode with somebody else who's potentially looking to be a founder, someone who's been a founder and wants to see if their experience is kind of similar and compare, contrast. That'd be great. So share this episode out there with anyone else that might be interested. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.